Alright, so as a new user of this application, will be first introduced to the welcome page. So let me execute the codes to display the welcome page. Alright, so in the welcome page, we have this information, that is the BMI calculator, find the body mass index by the user inputting the weight and then the height, and then the system will calculate the BMI of the user. So at this point, the user is being greeted with this prompt: say, do you want to register to get access to medical assistance after knowing your BMI? So here the user can choose yes. So if the user click on yes, so if the user click on yes and then click next, the system will not permit the user to move to the next page unless he or she enters his ID. So the ID can be any of either your voter's ID or health insurance, whatever. So I will choose this as my ID, 17,600 as my ID, and then will also be required to enter his or her email if if you want to register for medical assistance. So this is my email as at robert149@gmail.com. Then I click next. Good. So upon clicking next, a registration page will be open for the user to fill the forms. So the ID number the user entered is being shown at the registration or on the registration form. That is 17,600 is as indicated here. So at this point, the user will be required to make some entries. So you enter your first name and then my last name. Okay, so sorry, so good. And then my mobile number 0247985623 as my mobile number. Then I'll enter my date of birth. That's 03/04/1993. That's my date of birth. Then the email that was provided at the welcome page has also been indicated here. So at this point, the user need not to enter any email. Then your gender, you have a drop down list to select from. So I'm a male, and then you create a password. So I would like to use the password 1600 as my password and 1600 as my password. At this point, if a user forgets and then let's say create a password as 1600 and then maybe upon confirming made a mistake and then enter a different password, and then he or she try to register. So click on the register and see, look at what happens. So it gives a prompt, a password do not match. Good. Also, if the user tries to leave certain fields blank, and try to overlook and then register, it will not permit him or her to continue. The form cannot be empty. So at this point, we create a password. Okay, let me change it to 1029, and then I'll confirm 1029. Then I register. Boom. Registration or registered successfully. Okay. So after registering, then the user may like to log in so that he or she can have access to the calculator. So you click on the login, and then a login page will be displayed for the user. A login page will be displayed for the user. So in case the user wants to go back and then re-register, you can click on this and then the registration page can open, or click on the login and then the login page will also appear. So let me enter my email and then my password, and then I'll click on login. Good. So I have my calculator being displayed here. So this is where the user will be required to enter his or her weight and then height, and then click on calculate for the calculation to be done. Alright, so at this point, the ID number that the user entered, that is 17,600, is also being shown here to the user. So let's say I'm the user and my weight is 77. Alright, so a user enters his or her weight as 77 kilogram and then height of 1.7 meters, and then click on calculate. So this is what is shown, a BMI, so a previous BMI of this, and then a BMI, like a BMI of 26.6436, and a previous BMI of the same thing. So let's go to the interpretation. A BMI of this indicate that you are overweight. Please see a doctor. So from a previous reading of this shows that you are improving. Okay, so it has the date and then the time, and then the date last checked, that is Thursday, January 4th, 2024. Good. So this is the BMI of the user. Good. So let's say the user wants to check the BMI again, or yes, want to check the BMI again. Let me put it that way. Okay, so let's take it like the user has reopened the system again and want to check the BMI for the next time. like for the next day, or let's say do it a second time. So we enter the same ID that we used to log in earlier. So the 17,600 was the ID, but this time around, let's say the user forgot and then enter an email like this, and then click yes to go. So let's click next and see what happens. Invalid email. So this prompt appears on the page to tell the user that the email is not correct. So that is it. Then let's move to next. Good. Now, because the user is already registered, and if he tries to register again, it will not work if he tries to register again. So at this point, what the user needs to do is to go straight to the login and then enter his or her particular. So this is my logins. Click login and then wow, there I go. Good. So at this point, earlier on, I used a BMI of a weight of 77 kilogram and then a height of 1.7. Yes. So when we go into the database as the SQL server, this is my registration column. So this is my ID 17,600, and then my first name, last name, and then all the details, my password, and then email. So then let's get to the next table, that is the calculation table. The calculation table, and this is my first email or my first check of the BMI, and this is the ID that I used, and then I have my weight 77 and then height of 1.7, and I had a BMI of 26.64, and I checked that on Thursday, January 4th, 2024 at this time. Good. So I want to log in again and then check it for the second time, but this time around my weight, let's say I have worked on my weight and my weight has reduced to 65, and then since height I would like to maintain it as 1.7, then try to check the BMI again. Good. Then there we go. So my BMI is 22.49135, and then the previous BMI is 26.6436. Let me go back to the table. So the previous is 26.6436. So and then the date last checked, I think I did it on the same date. And then so the interpretation, a BMI of 22.491 indicate that you are normal. And then from the previous reading of 26.643, this shows that you have improved. Congratulations. So I have actually worked on my BMI. Now I'm having a normal BMI. So fast forward, I would like to step into my codes and then discuss how the codes run. So this is the index page, or this is the welcome page, and this codes are the HTML codes that gives this design, that gives this welcome design. Good. So this is it. Let's step into it. So we have this that describes, or that gives the defaults, and also describe the languages, and then certain plugins that are needed for this HTML CSS codes to run. And then we have uh, the title, that is a body mass index system. And then we have the CSS style for the page. So this actually gives the appearance of this, beautifies the various pages. So we have the main body, and then we have the form. So we open a form tag, and then we create an ID for the form, that is form 1. So the form 1 has its CSS codes, that helps to gives a unique design of the form. Okay. Alright, so then after the form, in the form are divisions. So you have the main division that starts from this end, and this division is what contains the banner, and so this division is what contains the banner all the way, and the pictures up to the footer. This division contains the banner, and then the main content up to the footer. Good. So that is it. Then we have another division that also contains the logo, and I'll say the footer. So that is it. This is the division that holds the footer. Good. Then in the main division, we have an inserted image here that holds the banner. So if I highlight it and goes to the design, that is what is holding this banner or this image. And then we have this, we open a paragraph, and then we made this body mass index system very strong so that it appears bold in the header. Then we open another division. We ended this header division. And then we create another division below the header division. And this is where this division holds the user ID, and then the emails, and then the email. It goes all the way to, and then breaks down all the way to this division, and then so that is it. That is what holds the ID, the email, and then the checkbox, and then another division was created to host the various images, and then uh, certain content that we can see on the page. So this division holds all the information here. Then the last division is what holds the footer. So basically, this is the HTML code behind this designs behind this design. Then we are going to step into the CSS source code. We're going to step into the CSS source code. So in order to get access to that code, we move to the index dot the C# source code. So at this point, we do some importation of certain libraries as indicated here. These are very unique libraries that are needed for the system to run. Good. So we have all these logins available, and then we could see that we've hide a label here, and this label throws an exception error message if a user makes a wrong input. This system need to prompt the user that the input he or she made is not the best or is not accepted by the system. So we don't want that label to appear when this page or when the page load. So when the page load, we want that message to be hidden. That is why we have set it to false. Now, there is an event handler that is btn next underscore click. What is the work of this event handler? Quickly, let me go there and then click on the button, the next button, and then we observe what happens. Alright, so when you click on this event handler, next it's brought us to the event handler, this btn next underscore click. So when this button is clicked, then it needs to show this error message, that is the label. It needs to show it, so that in case a user enters a wrong input, the error message will be displayed. So where from this error message and how does it even work? We introduce try catch exception, that is to handle exceptions. So if a user enters a wrong input, this code will be executed, and then a prompt will be given as incorrect inputs. Check the values and try again. So this message will be displayed to the user for the user to know that he has made a wrong input. Good. Then we can see session to bracket respondent ID equals to txt id.text. This session here is responsible for storing the ID provided by the user, and also responsible for storing the email that was provided by the user. So the user's ID and the email will be stored in the sessions. Then we move to this condition. If RDB yes.checked, then it should execute this code. This RDB stands for radio button. So if the yes radio button is checked, it should execute this code. That is, it should direct the user to the register ASPS, that is the register page. Else, it should either does nothing, it should either do nothing, or it should just be at where it is the BMI page, or the same page should refresh to its normal page. Good. Now we move to the registration page, the register page. So this is the HTML and then the CSS source codes that gives the design of the registration or the register page. Okay, so we can see a very nice design here, and this HTML CSS codes is what is giving us this nice design. So as discussed earlier, these are the CSS codes responsible for styling the page. Then we have the main body of the page. We used form here. So on the form is what we can see all the design. Then we open a main division, and the main division is what holds the main division is what holds the form. So the division starts from here and moves all the way downwards. Okay, so start from here and then moves all the way to yes, it moves all the way down. So we actually used the form to close the main division. We actually use the main form to close the main division. So if you scroll up, we can see the main form, and once it is highlighted and we come here, it means it highlights everything and then leaves out this image. I'll talk about this image. Then after the main division, we created a subdivision also. Here there's a division here that goes down, down, and then ends here. What is this division holding? So this division holds this information. There's a blank page here that is to create a space in between these images, and then the writings are down here. So the first subdivision holds this information. Okay. Then after that, another division was created, and that division was named a container, which has been styled in the CSS code. So this division holds the labels and then the text boxes, and that moves downwards to end somewhere here. Good. So that is it. That's what we are seeing. Good. Now we can see ASP text box ID, that is first name. So there are text boxes and labels for user registration information. So here the user is being provided with a text box and then labels, and then placeholders were used as well to direct the users as in what to do. For instance, we have the text box and then the ID of the text box is txt first name, and there is a placeholder that says enter first name, and then it is having some styling here with a height and then width rightly defined, and then there is another text box also. Good. Another text box that is having the ID as last name with a placeholder telling the user as to what to do, enter a last name. There is another text box with ID txt mobile, and then a placeholder. The placeholders actually is in the text boxes, and they are in faint ink that direct the user what to do. It goes all the way downwards. Almost all text boxes here has placeholders in them. Then we have buttons. We have the sign in button. We have a button with an ID or identity called BTN sign in, and then we have a button with an identity as BTN cancel with their respective styling rightly defined. Then there is a success message and then some links as well. There is a label with an ID, LBL success message. What is the work of this LBL success message? This codes or this LBL success message will be executed when registration is successful. And then there is a link, a hyperlink that with a navigation URL that is directing the user after clicking on the hyperlinks. So the hyperlink will lead the user to the login page. That is what is shown here. And then there is another label responsible for handling error messages. That is why it has an ID as LBL error message with a 4 color of red. So it will also come to play when a user makes an error or registration wasn't successful. That is where this error message will be called and then executed. Then at the last end we have the image inserted at the bottom as shown here. Good. So this is the HTML source codes behind the design, this registration page design. Fast forward, we get into the C# source code. So this is a C# source code responsible for or needed for the code to be executed successfully. So we have the libraries rightly imported as shown here. Then there is a connection string rightly defined here. That is after the connection was made and then the string was created in the page. Then we have the page load event handler. This page load event handler has some code in it. LBL error exception, that is during registration, if a user enters, there should be an exception handler to handle those errors. And then this is a label responsible for giving the user that prompt. And then we have txt email address dot text equals to session responded email dot string. With this txt email address dot text, or this text box, is responsible for showing the user's ID that he or she entered during the or at the welcome page, that is at the index page. It will display it in the registration page. Then it will also display the ID that the user entered at the index page. So as soon as the page is loaded, this code will be this code will be shown, or the results of this code will be shown on the page. We have another event handler called the btn sign-in underscore click. So this event handler has all these codes to be executed when the sign-in button or the register button is clicked. So when the register button is clicked and there is an error, the try catch exceptions will manage any wrong input. If there is a wrong input, it will give a prompt to the user by executing this code. If there is no error, then it will step into this code, or it should execute this code that says if txt first name.text is empty, and when all text boxes are empty, it should show this error message that is saying form cannot be empty. And then, or else, if txt password.text is not equals to txt confirm password, that is, if the password the user entered is not equal to the one, or is not equal to the confirmed password, it should also display an error message that password does not match. Else it should execute these codes. It should execute these codes. It should then insert into a sign up, that is the name of the database table, sign up. It should insert into the sign up table a user ID, a first name, last name, mobile, and the rest. It should insert all this data into the table from these text boxes. From these text boxes, it should insert into it, and then there is an SQL command here to cause the codes to be, or the commands to be executed. The string connection needs to be open for the data to be inserted into the table. Then after that, the connection should be closed. Once all these are successfully done, it should show a message to the user, and a JavaScript alert was used, script manager was used, and then the alert message was registered successfully. So this is the catch handler to handle all wrong inputs. So when a wrong input is made, it should execute this code called incorrect input. The user should try again. Then there's another event handler called void clear. This actually helps the page to refresh. After the user has registered. It should cause it to refresh. And then there is a button, an event handler called btn cancel. When the user click on cancel, what should it do? If the user click on cancel, it should take the user to the index index ASPX. So it should take the user to index ASPX. Fast forward, we move to the login. With the logins, this is the front end of the login here, where the user will be made to enter his email and then password. There is a label here for error messages and then 2 buttons. Good. Now let's go to the HTML codes. These are the HTML codes that's with the Cascadian style sheets to give the designs and the stylings. So it also has some kind of a main division and then subdivisions to give these designs. Good. Quickly, let's get into the source code of the login page. So at this point too, we need to import the necessary libraries needed for the codes or the page to run. So we have all the the libraries here, and then SQL connection string need to be created. Successfully done. Here we don't want any no code was being placed in the page load handler. Then we move straight to the btn click event handler. So when you click on the login button, what should happen? There should be a query to check if email and password match in the database. That is a string. And then there is a local variable here, check. And what does this? So what does this check does, or why do we have this local variable? Now, it is going straight into the database to go and check the table, that is the database table sign up, whether the user's email he provided and the password he provided actually matches with what was provided earlier on or what is in the table. Then there should be some command which will cause the queries to be executed. So there should be an open connection, and then a query will be executed. And when query is being executed, then a boolean comes here. If the email and then the password provided really matches with what is in the database, then it should give an integer of 1. So the 1 here confirms that the email provided and the password actually matches. If it doesn't matches, then it should provide 0 to give an error message that there is a wrong email or password. So that is why we can have, or we can see this local, this is a local variable temp that I use for this page. So if temp is equals to 1, then there should be a script manager here to give an alert that login is successful, and then it should redirect the user to the main page, that is the BMI page. It should direct the user to this page. Else it should perform this, execute this code, and then else if the text boxes are empty, the email text box and the password are empty, and the user tried to click login, it should provide this error message that provide login details. Then else it should ask this, an invalid email or password. That is when wrong input or yes, wrong inputs are made. It should execute this code. So fast forward, we move to the BMI page. That's BMI page. So this is the HTML that gives this design. Okay, so this is the design for the BMI page. The design for the BMI page, that is the calculator. Okay, so let's quickly step into the CSS code, the C# source code. So as required, you need these libraries to get or to keep the page active. So we have to also create a connection string as that has been done here. And then at the page load handler, we can see all these codes. So what it means is that when the page is loaded, this txt id.text equals to session respondent ID. We want to display the user ID to him or her on the BMI page. So we have introduced it or the codes in the page load. So that means as soon as the page load, the user will see his or her ID. And then there is a label that is responsible for the BMI interpretation. That is, it should interpret the user's BMI that the system has calculated. And then after that, it needs to give some comments about the BMI, whether the user is improving its BMI or is getting worse. So when the page is loaded, we want all these messages. We don't want it to show when the page is loaded. So we have set all of them to false. It means they should hide when the page loads. That is why it is empty when we get to the BMI page. They all hide. Then we move to the calculate, the BTN calculate event handler. So when the calculation or the calculate button is clicked, there is an exception handler here. This is to handle all wrong inputs from a user. So if a user enters any wrong inputs, this try catch exception handles all the wrong inputs as discussed earlier. Okay, so at this point, we want the exception messages, error messages to be shown when there is any error. So we have set it to true. Yes. And then in calculating the BMI, we will need some variables for the calculation. So the variables that we will use for the calculation is weight, height, and then after calculating the BMI, we need another variable that will hold it. So BMI was used as a variable to hold it. And then we'll talk about previous BMI also. That will be the BMI that will be saved or that will be shown to the user when he or she checks his BMI again. So these variables need to be declared. So we have declared weight, height, BMI, previous BMI, all of them as floats. Then we use the variables to hold the user input, because whatever the user input in the text box comes as string. So we need to convert all the strings to floats. That is why we can see weight equals weight equals float.parse.txt.weight, and then so it was done for the weight and then the height, after which the formula for calculating BMI, which is equal to weight over height times height, was used. And once this calculation is performed, the results, the answer will be saved in this variable BMI. Then it needs to be shown to the user. So txt bmi.text here, this text box needs to hold the BMI, but before that it needs to be converted to string. So it has been converted to string and it will be shown in this text box, txt bmi.text. Alright. So if a user enters or check his BMI for the first time, in the txt pBMI, this is the previous BMI text box, it needs to display this message that you do not have any previous data. So the previous BMI text box will not show, or it will only show this message to the user. Then we need to also save the date in which the user checked his or her BMI. So txt date dot this code will actually fetch the system's date and then save it in the database, so that the next time the user checks his BMI, he or she will know the exact date he checked his BMI, and then will be able to compare with the current date. After this, the BMI and then the date, together with the weight and height, need to be saved in the database. So we need to write code for that. So we have string with the local variable ins equals to insert into calculate. That is the name of the next table. There is a next table in the database called calculate. So it needs to insert into the calculate the ID. At this point we need the ID, the weight, the height. The BMI now becomes previous BMI because it will be appeared as a previous BMI when it is saved. Then it should save date and then day's time. Then from these text boxes, txt ID, txt weight, and the others. So that is it, and then the connection should be open for this insert should be successful. Then this code needs to be executed so that all the commands and then the queries will also be executed. After that, we need to retrieve from the data. We need to display to the user after he or she has saved it and is checking the BMI again. We need to display to the user the previous BMI, the date he or she checked it, from the table called calculate. From the table called calculate. So we use these codes to help to retrieve the data from it. Once it is done, the txt bmi.text will display the previous BMI, and then the txt previous date.text will display the date that is stored in the database table. Then we need to show an interpretations and then comment on the database. So these codes that were set to false during the page load, we now need it, so we set all of them to true. And then we have a previous BMI. The previous BMI, because we need it now and it is in the form of a string, because it has been displayed to the user, so it is already in the form of a string, we need to convert it to float so that we save it in this PBMI, that is previous BMI. So we come to conditions that will help the interpretations, and then the comments are available to the user. So the first condition is that if BMI is less than 18.5, then the interpretation should go this way. A BMI of this will bring the user's actual BMI in this column. So a BMI of this indicates that you are underweight. You are underweight, so you need to see a doctor. Then at this point, maybe the exception handler will or may display a message, but we want it to add when the code is executed. We don't need any exception handler, so we set it to false. So if BMI is greater than previous BMI, that is, if your current BMI is greater than your previous BMI, then that means that you should comment that from your previous reading, it shows that you are improving. That is, when it is in this range, then you are improving. So the same conditions runs all the way down to the last button. The conditions runs like that. That give the interpretations and then the comments. And this is the catch, the try catch exception handlers. So when incorrect inputs are made, it should provide a response or a feedback that incorrect input, please try again. And then when the cancel button is clicked, that is when this button is clicked, the cancel button is clicked, it should redirect the user to the index page, Alright, so thank you for watching.